But being completely honest with you guys, you're judging me, aren't you? I can feel the judgment right now. Hey guys, Matt McKeever here. So you may remember from a previous video I shot just after Christmas that I kind of did some reflecting on my channel and decided I wanted to try and provide even more value to you, my viewers. It really came down to, I thought, transparency, being authentic was going to provide the most value to you guys. So beginning in 2017, I'm going to start tracking all my personal expenses and showing it to you on a monthly basis, just to kind of give you a rough idea of what my lifestyle looks like, and you can use that either as a baseline or just a gauge to, do you want to live like Matt McKeever? Just throwing it out there for you guys. Tracking my expenses is something I've always kind of been in the habit of since around 2010, when I first kind of stumbled upon personal finances and early retirement and financial independence and all that great stuff. And so recently my channel just kind of blew up a bit on Reddit, or at least blew up from my perspective. I gained about 20 subscribers over 2 days, which was really unusual activity, which is amazing. Thank you to all the Redditors that have checked out my YouTube channel, as well as thanks for giving me a chance and subscribing. I really appreciate it, and I hope to provide value. So with that said, I was planning to shoot this video already anyways, but I was going to shoot it later next week, where I figured why not shoot it now, seeing how I've got a little bit of momentum. I've been tracking my expenses since 2010. I quickly just tried to find the files for it. I could only find 2012 and 2015 for some reason. I'm sure the other files are buried somewhere on an external hard drive. That being said, I thought it'd be kind of fun just to walk through and look at what my lifestyle looked like back in 2012, 2015, and then we can both compare it to what it looks like in 2017 once I finish the month of January. But before we get into what my actual spending looks like, why I like tracking my expenses but hate the idea of budgeting. The idea of budgeting, I think for a lot of people, myself included, really brings up ideas of sacrifice, of scarcity, and just of struggling. That's not how anyone really wants to live their life. And so if you have that mentality, if you're trying to budget, you're going to always be bumping up against those preconceived notions. And so instead, to me, tracking my expenses was a lot more just about becoming conscious of my consumption. And so I never wanted to be a mindless consumer that was just adding to the waste and inefficiencies of society. So when I kind of spun it that way, it was an idea I was way more receptive to versus actually budgeting. So one of the great things about tracking your expenses versus budgeting is you can just really batch process it. And so what I mean by that is you can gather all your expenses for the last 2 months and then just kind of crank it out in half a day and look at what you spent over those last 2 months. Where with budgeting, you need to be a lot more on top of things, because if you're starting to go off path, if you're going over budget, you need to start really pulling things back in. Where if you're just trying to become mindful of your consumption, to me, being mindful of your consumption is less of an exact science and more of just a general guiding principle rather than an exact tactic you're implementing. And so what I'd recommend to you guys, if you're interested in tracking your expenses, is take 6 months to a year and track it diligently. And that's really going to give you an idea of your consumption patterns, and it's going to give you a great baseline to compare future years against. And then after that, if it's a habit you don't want to do on a monthly basis, you can do what I started to do like in 2013, 2014, which was just do kind of what I'd call spot audits, or just kind of financial checkups, where I would just randomly pick 3 or 4 months of the year and track the expenses for that month, and then compare it to my baseline, and just kind of think about, okay, I'm spending about 30% more on eating out a month. Is that adding value to my life? Is that a pattern I want to continue, or is that something I want to scale back? And so it really just kind of helped always point me back on course if I was starting to drift off. And so that's what I really liked about tracking my expenses versus budgeting. And I already kind of had the financial resolve that I wasn't mindlessly consuming a lot. But even by just tracking my expenses, I became a lot more mindful about some of my weak areas where I have a tendency to spend too much, which is often alcohol and comic books and board games. And so that was just something I wanted to be aware of. And it's fine for me to spend more money in that area than maybe the average person does, as long as I'm conscious of it and as long as I'm really believing it's providing value to my life. And so you really do need to understand what your expenses are, what your consumption level is, so that if you ever want to reach financial independence, retire early, you need to know what sort of asset base or passive income level you need to achieve in order to cover all your current living expenses. All right, well, enough talking about generalities. Let's jump into my spreadsheet and take a look at what my consumption looked like back in 2012 and 2015. And then you guys will be able to compare it once I release my January 2017 numbers and see how my lifestyle changed. Alright, and so let's just jump into July 2012. This is just kind of how I track my expenses. I'm not saying it's how you guys have tracked your expenses. I'm probably even going to tweak it a little bit in my 2017. And however I tweak that spreadsheet, I'll make it available once I release that video so that everyone else that's interested in tracking their expenses similar to myself, you can go ahead and do it the same. But essentially all I would do is just do a download of my bank account, which you can see right here. Just do a download of all the transactions in my bank account and allocate them. In addition, I would do all the transactions on my credit card and allocate them. So for all my receipts and cash expenses, if I didn't get a receipt with a cash expense, I just write down on a piece of paper and just throw it in a Ziploc bag. You can see here's January 2017's Ziploc bag right there. Just kind of throw it in a drawer. And the beauty of tracking your personal expenses is you can batch process, right? So I just need to take, once I'm ready to process the month of January, I just take that bag out, list all the information in my spreadsheet as you can see here, and then I got my cash expenses. And again, you don't have to break out your expenses into the same categories that I have done here. This is just kind of my personal preference. It's a way that worked well for me and just really kind of allowed me to understand where my money was going. So you can see for July 2012, I'd spent just over 90 bucks on alcohol and beer. On books, comics, and board games, I spent about $360. Now that's a lot of money. I don't normally spend that much every month. Usually what I kind of do is I'll buy a whole bunch of trade paperbacks and books all at once, and that will kind of last me for 3, 6, 9 months at a time. And so that's what I'm going to guess I did back here. I honestly don't remember. Cable and internet, I spent 86 bucks on. And that's actually just for cable, and that's a habit I cut out, I forget when, but like 2014, 2015, I got rid of cable. Eating out, you can see I spent about 200 bucks on eating out. And so here's just a quick caveat. For those of you that are watching this, I feel like there's probably two major majorities that are watching this. There's the people that have never really considered their financial expenses and never really been conscious of their consumption. And so to you guys, the level of spending that I'm showing you here maybe seems super low and unattainable. And then for those of you that are familiar with financial independence or are focused on reaching financial independence as soon as possible, my consumption patterns probably seem ridiculously high and extravagant. And so just keep that in mind, that everything's about your perspective. This is kind of what works for me. Because I'm starting out documenting my expenses again now in January 2017, I'm probably going to try and impress you guys for the first couple months, and my expenses will be probably lower than average, and that's just because I'm aware that people are going to be watching and judging me. And so that's partly why I wanted to show you my previous consumption patterns when I wasn't planning on anyone watching it. It was really just about me learning from myself, because let's try and be as authentic as possible. When I know that you guys are watching and judging me, I'm probably going to try and be on my best behavior, where when left to completely my own devices, I'm going to be less diligent. And I think that's probably just practical human nature for a lot of us. So just be aware of that. So then for food and household, I only spent $82 that month. That seems ridiculous. Well, that explains why I ate out so much. Wow. Spent 90 bucks on gas. Mortgage interest was $430. Nights out and dates were about $300, and so that could be anything from going to a concert to doing a mini road trip to just a date out. Then I spent 50 bucks on stuff, and so stuff was really just kind of a catch-all for me. It was something that, it wasn't a tool or something that was going to make me productive. It wasn't a book, so it was probably just I honestly don't remember what that was. Oh, yeah, we won't worry about what that was. And utilities were $225. I mean, should I keep it 100% real with you guys? Because if you really want to know what that $50 in stuff was, tell me in the comments and I'll answer you in the comments. Charity, 100 bucks. That was probably just a random donation to someone that was doing a charity run or something like that. Telephone, 148. I just know because I'm familiar with what I spend on a month, I must have missed paying my bill the previous month, so that was me paying 2 months at once. And then $1.50, which would have just been probably a bank transaction fee. So that kind of gives you a rough idea of what my expenses were for the month of July 2012, added up to about $2,100. Then also for just other cash outflows, I had $1,200, and that was principal repayment on my mortgage And at that time I had a small drip portfolio that was just I was slowly trying to build up some passive income through some blue chip Canadian dividend payers. So here in 2015, let's look at January. Great. So 2 years ago from this month, what did my spending look like? Well, in the alcohol and vices category, I spent $180. So you can see that was a much higher month than it was back in 2012. But my books and comics were only $9, so that's a lot lower. Off the top of my head, I'm going to guess that $9 was just from a used bookstore, and so that was one of the things I kind of started transitioning towards when I became more mindful of my consumption. Was I could buy the same trade paperbacks used often at a used bookstore for pennies on the dollar. Oh, so I guess in 2015 I was still actually paying for cable. Interesting. So $90 for cable then. I thought I'd got rid of it by then. Must have been shortly after. Then eking out, you can see $200. So that's actually pretty in line with what it was in 2012. Entertainment was $20, which I think that probably would have been a concert ticket. Food and household was $95. Man, I didn't used to buy groceries at all back then. That is crazy. I used to eat out a lot. My diet back then, and even today, consists way too much of pizza and alcohol. I'll work on it in 2017. Gas was $45, and so I don't know what you guys are spending on transportation, but my gas costs maybe seem low, and that's often just because I usually was focused on trying to live close to my employment. Now, I wasn't doing it as amazingly as Mr. My Mustache or Jacob from Early Retirement Extreme did, but I was still just mindful. I didn't want to be driving and spending $100 a week on gas. So then I spent about $23 on home improvement. Mortgage interest was $400. Stuff, so that was $315. That I remember this. It was a big purchase for me. It was a birthday present to myself. My birthday's in February, so I bought this just before February. I still use that device to this day, so you know, it was worthwhile. If you're curious what that is, tell me in the comments and I'll answer you in the comments. And trips, vacation, concerts, that was $32. And utilities was $223, and $70 for telephone. And you can see my mortgage principal went up a lot in 2015, and that's just because every couple months I would always bump up my mortgage payment, even if it was just like by $10 or $25 a week, and that stuff really spirals, and you really don't notice it at all. And that's what's really powerful about the same concept of pay yourself first. And then you can see I spent $400 on my drip portfolio back then. So let's jump to May. Okay, so here we are in May. So in May of 2015, you can see I spent $350 on my vices. That seems a little ridiculous. But being completely honest with you guys, you're judging me, aren't you? I can feel the judgment right now. But no money on books or comics. Man, I still had cable then? That's ridiculous. No excuse. I should have got rid of cable by then. That's embarrassing. Eking out though was at least a lot lower, $75. That's good. Entertainment was $80. That's fine. Hey, finally started spending some money on groceries, $150. Gas was $175. That seems a lot higher. Must have done a trip then. Home improvement, $22. Mortgage interest, $300. Stuff I spent $45 on. Utilities, $290. Telephone, $70. And then $2,000 mortgage principal. So again, you can see I kept just ratcheting up my mortgage payments. And now that I'm thinking about it, I do kind of remember in 2015, I really started putting the pedal to the metal. Yeah. In the principal repayments. And then $200 on my drip. And so for the month of May 2015, I spent $1,600. And so you can kind of see I was often spending somewhere between, say, let's call it $1,500 and $2,500 a month. So based on that, roughly I could assume that I need about $24,000 a year in passive income. And so that's really how I stayed focused on trying to grow my real estate portfolio, was because I knew that was attainable, that wasn't an impossible milestone to reach through real estate investment. At least in my market. Your market could be completely different and real estate could be a terrible investment. I don't know your market. But in London, Ontario was a very practical way, and so that's really what kind of gave me focus. And I'll have a video coming out later that's focused on the core concepts of financial independence, and that will really delve in, for those of you that aren't familiar, why controlling your spending is so important. But just trust me, controlling your spending is very important if you want to reach financial independence at an early age. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a rough idea of kind of what my expenses and my lifestyle looked like back in 2012 and 2015, and it'll give you a rough idea of what to expect from 2017 once I release those numbers. Any insights you've gleaned just from looking at my expenses? And let me know, how do my expenses stack up to your expenses? It's not a competition, but I'm still just as curious as the average person to hear about others' financial pictures. And if you're interested in documenting your own personal expenses for a month and then sharing them on my YouTube channel, hit me up either through email or in the comment section down below, because I'd love to potentially have you as a guest, because I just want to show a wide spectrum of different lifestyles to display on my YouTube channel, because I think that's what's going to be most useful, is if you can find someone that's very similar already to you. It's going to be really easy then to kind of map on their processes or their mindful consumption onto your lifestyle. So as always, thanks for taking the time to watch this, guys. I really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed already, please hit that subscribe button and leave me a like if you've enjoyed this content or any of my other content. And be sure to check out my other videos. Until next time, remember, making money is a team sport. There's more than enough money out there for us to all make it. So let's just go make some money, guys. Thanks. Bye.